wow, this is another webinar. So today I'm actually really excited because we're going to be talking about a topic that I really find very interesting. I think a lot of people actually find it very interesting also, what we're going to speak about today. And we're actually extremely lucky today for one reason, because we have a very important person that will be joining us at this webinar today, which I'm actually extremely excited about. And I'm going to try and introduce him in my own words, right? But also part of what we're going to try and do today is to try and get to know him, because we're really privileged today to have him join us. So I'll start out by saying that he undertook 10 years of rigorous residency and fellowship training at really top world-renowned centers like the Hammersmith Hospital in London, the Royal London Hospital, and also the University College Hospital in London. He's not just a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons, but also has a master's title for his research thesis, and also has really great interest in laparoscopic surgery, especially when it comes to acid reflux. He's a member of the British Obesity Society and Metabolic Surgery, and also for the International Federation of Surgery for Obesity. We all know how obesity is such a big deal and causes a lot of stuff at the moment. So we're speaking to someone who's seen it all. And also he's also a member of the Association of the Upper GI Surgeons and of the UK, and also in the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery. He has published over 50 publications and presentations. And what's really important as a doctor normally is not just what you've done, but how you actually build the next generation of people. And our speaker today is involved in training doctors, not just in the UK, but also in Europe, in America, and in the Gulf. He's got a massive bariatric surgery and laparoscopic surgery practice at the Harley Street, the renowned Harley Street in London. He's got interest in weight loss and diabetes. He's got interest in acid reflux disease, gallstone, hernia surgery, and surgical emergencies. From what I've just said, I hear that he's got the experience that we need. And he's been a doctor for a really long time, more than 20 years, I think 26 years to be precise. And the thing I like so much about him also is that he's written this amazing book, which we will also share tonight, called Why We Eat Too Much. That's really interesting. For a lot of us, eating a lot is like a big deal. So we're going to also be hearing insight from his book. And also he's going to speak to us about a topic about lasting weight loss. We hear about weight loss. A lot of people go into these diets and they do a lot of exercises. Maybe they train a few bits of surgery, and then they come back and they go back to the original weight where they started out from, with all the efforts that they've done. Now, I must say that obviously, I'm talking about no other person but Mr. also known as Dr. Andrew Jenkinson. And Dr. Andrew Jenkinson, I'm so happy to have you today with us. Thanks and welcome to this webinar.
Hi, Chi-Chi. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
I know I talked a lot about you in a different way, but I think a lot of people here would like to also hear about you as a person, if that makes sense. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm just going to do a bit of recap. We're talking about the secrets of lasting weight loss. And for people that are just joining, with us today is a renowned upper GI and bariatric surgeon, Dr. Jenkinson, and he's also a known Sunday Times bestseller for his book it talks about why we eat too much. That's a really interesting book, by the way. And I thought that maybe to kick out today, it would be nice for you to tell us a little bit about you, what your day-to-day is like, and what it feels like to be the Dr. Jenkinson.
Yeah, it feels okay. It's pretty busy. So yeah, my normal day, usually get up pretty early, usually have a pretty early start. It's either clinics or surgeries. I love them both. Clinics because, I can help people and I see people, a year or two after their bariatric weight loss surgery, and they're totally different people. You can hardly recognize them. They've lost lots and lots of weight. They've got their confidence back. They've got their old lives back. So that's really enjoyable. And then the surgery days are even more enjoyable because I love operating. I'm writing another book at the moment, so when I'm not working, I'm sort of writing the next book, which is going to be called How to Eat and Still Lose Weight, and that's sort of a progression on from the first book. So it's all about ultra-processed foods, how that interacts with our habits, and how to change your sort of habits and lifestyle for sustained weight loss long term. But yeah, all good. And then I do a clinic in Dubai as well as London, so occasionally I'm traveling. I have clinics in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So yeah, all good actually. It's good to get a change of scene now and again.
Thank you so much. Obviously, you're very busy, and for you to be with us today, and for especially a lot of people have a lot of questions to ask you. I think it's so great because it's you're here, you've written it all, you've seen it all about when it comes to weight loss. And I was just wondering, like, what patients come to you? Because I think there's a lot of questions people have. At what point do we say, listen, what I'm doing is not working, I need to go see you as a person?
Yeah, so it's usually when people have finally come to the realization that, usually after years of dieting and exercise, or even decades, actually quite often, they've tried every single diet under the sun. They can lose weight, but they put it back on, and they're just at a total, loss of, how to get out of this condition that they're in, being obese. And sometimes they have like complications with obesity, comorbidities such as diabetes, blood pressure, aching joints from all the stress and things. So they sort of end up saying, okay, I'm going to sort of explore the possibility of surgery, and that they come to my clinic. So the people who come, I've been through years and years of, failed dieting. And that was the thing that actually intrigued me about, writing this book. So this book was a sort of reflection on why would someone want to come to me to ask me to take their stomach out when doctors say, just go on a diet and go to the gym. If it was that easy, people would do it. They wouldn't come to me to ask for a cerebral gastric bypass. So there is a lot more to weight loss than calories. And it's actually what is in the sort of processed food in the Western, typical Western diet. So we know that obesity is right for most people who, eat the American type Western diet. So processed foods, fast foods, foods with lots of carbohydrates, lots of sugar, the culture of snacking all the time. And all these things slowly raise your insulin level. And insulin, as you know, as a doctor, Chi, if I was to inject you with insulin for treatment, you would put, 10 kilograms on. If you did that to me, I would put 10 kilograms on. So the Western diet is like a proxy drug. It's like giving a whole population insulin. Of course, they're going to get obese. So it's not the calories; it's what the food does to your body, or the signals the food sends to your body. And it's all really entwined with high insulin levels.
So I was going to say, like, because we're touching on the book of why we eat so much, right? Yeah. I was going to ask you a question. Why do you think, like, if everyone knows, like, the Western diet is like full of all these bad things, why are we eating it? What's the reason why we're still eating?
It's sort of like when you look at the history of food, we've always been processing food slowly. Even cooking is a form of processing. So processing foods historically was to make it more digestible, so you can actually chew it and actually preserve it for longer, and a little bit to make it taste better. But over the last 50 years, processing food has become industrialized with the addition of, lots and lots of chemicals, the removal of the base ingredients from foods, and the introduction of, lots of sugar, lots of flour, lots of different oils, to produce new foods, and then to color them and to put flavors in them and to make them, so good that they beat natural foods. So we crave them more. So the food scientists know what we like as humans. They know like the type of mouthfeel, the way we like it to be crunchy and soft and everything like this. That it should be a little bit bright, it should taste a little bit sugary, a little bit sour, these sort of things. They've worked on this for years, and they finally, over the last few decades, cracked it so that processed foods taste better than, for us humans, than natural foods. In addition to that, we're immersed in advertisements for processed and fast foods. And the brain works in a way, if we see a trigger of something reminding us of how good it tastes and how it makes us feel, that will make us crave it. So it's a whole industry, and it's not surprising that we sort of fall for it. As we are, only humans, as it were. We think we're quite complicated, but we have core desires that drive us towards processed foods. The problem is, that then causes not only obesity, but all the other associated Western diseases, diabetes, blood pressure, inflammatory diseases, cancers, these sort of things. So, and the whole, you say, well, why don't people just eat natural foods? It's because there's a big smokescreen of calories. So most doctors will say it's all about the calories, because you can get obviously calories in non-processed foods, so natural foods or processed foods. But it's not that. If you gave up, all processed foods and just ate natural foods, it's likely that you would lose quite a lot of weight and keep that weight off.
Okay.
Obviously, there's things like carbohydrates, like if you're having a lot of carbohydrates, like cassava, that sort of thing, rice, whatever, bread, that's not great for you because that increases your insulin. But, it's the processed foods with loads of sugar, loads of, preservatives in.
So when you talk about processed food, so that for people don't understand, what you mean is like food that is in packaging in the stores.
Yeah, so basically anything
like plant, yeah.
Anything that's going to last on the shelf, for 6 months or 3 or 4 months. So natural foods go off. They go off. You leave, your fish out of the fridge for a few hours, it's going to go off. You leave an apple, you don't eat it for a week, it's going to shrivel up. So these are natural foods. They do go off. They have they oxidize, and they spoil. Whereas processed foods have got such a lot of chemicals in them, but they've been, manufactured to stay on the shelf. And you can tell a processed food. It's going to be in a packet. It's probably going to have bright coloring. It's going to have health claims. It's going to say, low fat or whatever, or low cholesterol or whatever, low sugar. All of these things are signals, should be red flags that, this is actually not good food for you.
Okay. So when we're talking about calories and obviously what, like all the horrible processed food that we're eating, and that's what's making us pack on all this weight. And obviously the more weight we put on, our risk of diabetes goes up, our risk of like a lot of weight related comorbidities, including cancer, goes up, right? What do you think about this thing about having to be told that you have to, sorry, 1 minute. I think someone's unmuted themselves. Just trying to mute them. Sorry, Dr. James.
Okay.
Or how they muted themselves. Okay, sorry about that. So, can you hear me now, Dr. Jenkinson?
Yeah. I can, yeah.
Perfect. So my question was like, what do you think about calories and people talking about calorie counting, right? Because what we're saying now is that if you're eating processed food and your calorie counting, it makes no difference, isn't it?
So, I mean, we know from studies in America that, over the last 30 years, Americans have eaten 500 kilocalories more per day than 30 or 40 years ago. Now, you'd expect that, that's 500 kilocalories a day, that's 3,500 per week, which is the equivalent of 1 pound of fat gain, so 3,500 kilocalories, or over 2 weeks a kilogram. So you're looking at over a year, the population of America should be putting on 20 kilograms, almost 3 stone, but they're not. They put on actually about half a pound on average. So the question is, where does that energy from those calories that they are taking them in go to? It's actually over metabolized. So as you take in excess calories, your body's trying to keep you at a particular weight. And it will, increase your blood pressure, increase your pulse, increase your temperature, etc., etc. Your general metabolism will go up. So the question is, why, if our metabolism is so dynamic and it can, use up the calories when we overeat, and then when we go on a diet, it can just shrink down our metabolism, stop us losing weight. Why do people put weight on? And it's because of the signals that the food is giving them, as far as sort of insulin signaling, and other metabolic processes. Insulin and cortisol are the main things. And this is just the signals that processed foods and, extreme like refined carbohydrates and sugar give to us, where there's just slight raise in the insulin level. And actually the disruption and the blockage of these metabolic pathways that are supposed to maintain your weight. And we're talking about leptin resistance. Shall I sort of like expand on, because
yes, I think so. I think people want to hear, because I think we all live under the false impression that we have to cut our calories down. We need to restrict ourselves when we're dieting, like the word dieting, like constantly like cutting off calories. But then I guess from what we just talked about, because you studied food a lot, is that if we're cutting calories, but we're still eating the calories through processed food, we're really like kind of like it doubles whammy almost. You're doing the same thing and nothing is working. And I guess that's why people are struggling to lose weight, isn't it? Somehow.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of times in human history where there's been an absolute abundance of natural foods and the population doesn't put on weight. It's only when you introduce all of these processed foods that our population starts to really struggle. And the crux of it is that, in fact, the whole understanding of obesity should be, we have a really efficient way that our bodies try and maintain our weight. So basically our fat produces a hormone called leptin. The more fat we have, the more leptin we produce. And leptin goes into the bloodstream. It's then sensed by your brain, the weight control center in your brain, the hypothalamus. And that senses how much leptin we have. And from that, it will say, okay, we're carrying too much fat or not enough. And it's a little bit like the gas tank meter on your car or the petrol meter on your car. So it will tell you if you're full, if you're carrying too much energy or if you're not. Leptin has the same signaling pathway in the brain as insulin. So if you pour in too much insulin into your bloodstream, the leptin signal is going to get diluted and your brain's not going to realize you're carrying too much fat. And the analogy is that if you're driving along the highway or the motorway and your gas tank meter is flashing on red and you think, oh God, I've got to go to the gas station and fill up. And then when you start filling up, actually the gas tank's full already. The problem is the gas tank meter is broken. This is what leptin resistance is, and this is what obesity is. So the brain is getting the wrong signals from the body because it's being blocked by insulin. In fact, the brain's getting the opposite signals, that the leptin level is low because it's being blocked. So it thinks that, despite it being clear to the outside observer that you're carrying far too much weight, the brain is not getting that signal, it's getting the opposite signal. So the brain then says to you, actually, I can't sense the leptin. You need to start eating, and also we're going to turn down the metabolism to preserve energy. So we sort of look at people suffering with obesity and we say, okay, they've got a character, they've got a character flaw. They're a little bit too greedy, a little bit too lazy. But actually, those are the symptoms of leptin resistance. The disease obesity causes a high appetite and tiredness and lassitude, and that's what most doctors still don't understand that, and that's that concept is I think described quite well in the book. So it's not the calories, it's actually what is in what the food does to your body and how that affects this signaling pathway.
Thank you. So if you're just joining, we're speaking to Dr. Jenkinson, who is Sunday Times best-selling author of the book Why We Eat Too Much, and also he's a bariatric surgeon plus an upper GI surgeon, and he's one of the best, to be honest. And we're just talking about what causes lasting weight loss. So we've talked about the fact that eating processed food is one thing that stops you from really losing weight and keeping it off. And we're going to keep talking. If you have questions, please put it in the chat box to Anomo Health, and we'll try and address your questions in the second quarter of our Q&As. So thanks for joining. So I was going to ask another question, right? We already talked about the fact that what you eat makes a huge part of sustaining lasting weight loss, right? Yeah. What else can also help you achieve weight loss better in your practice that you do that will help people achieve their goals? Not faster, but I guess not faster is the word. The word is much more permanent.
So obviously, if you understand leptin resistance and why your weight is up, then you can just adjust your diet away from processed foods, away from sugar, away from carbohydrates, away from snacking. And if your food and eating habits were bad beforehand, you would inevitably lose weight and keep it off. If your food habits are okay, though, not too bad, and you still can't lose weight, then there is the option of the new injection treatments. These are called in the UK Ozempic or semaglutide. We have a new one coming out called Wegovy. I think in America Mounjaro.
Mhm.
is the one. They're all the same class of drugs.
The magic drug Ozempic. Everyone's like going crazy about Ozempic.
So seriously, my hand is actually tired writing prescriptions all day for it. Seriously, so it is a very good drug though. So
Yeah.
basically, that is an analog of this hormone called GLP-1. An analog means a copy.
Mhm.
And this hormone is produced naturally from our intestines, and it is released by our intestines in response to us eating. And it is a signal, it switches on the signal to stop eating, so it switches on satiety. And it's sort of like that feeling, you know, if you've really been to maybe a wedding or something and you've overeaten, it's that feeling you're still going to get about 3 hours after you've stopped eating. You're just not even thinking about food.
Food, yeah.
So that is that feeling you would get if you're on this injection. Also, it's, you know, it used to be a drug for diabetes, it still is, so it makes your insulin work better. So it improves insulin sensitivity, which means all of a sudden you don't need as much insulin, and you know that unblocks the leptin. So suddenly your brain starts to see the leptin and it just wants to lose the weight. So it is a pretty good drug. So it causes about 10 to 15% weight loss. So if you're 100 kilograms, or if you're 100 kilograms, it's going to be 15 kilo, you get down to 85. If you go in pounds, if you're 200 pounds, it's 30 pounds. So yeah, it's a pretty good drug. And then the next step, if you're really suffering with obesity, is bariatric surgery, which is, you know, where I come in with my surgical expertise. It's actually pretty safe surgery, you know, pretty fast recovery, 1 night in hospital, absolutely life-changing. So people will go from 150 kilograms, 300 pounds, you know, down to almost half that weight within a year. They're going to regain their confidence, you know, their self-esteem, their fitness, diabetes will go, blood pressure will go, cholesterol will improve. So yeah, that type of surgery is pretty safe. And when you look at the balance of risk, which is small, and benefit, which is massive, that's why these surgeries also are pretty popular.
So I was going to talk to you about more about Ozempic before we talk about surgery, right? I know there's a new craze for Ozempic, like everyone's looking for Ozempic, and apparently there's a shortage of Ozempic in London.
Yeah.
As people say, sometimes people are not able to get their prescriptions, right? And it's almost like a magic pill. Like people want to, and people want to have this because it stops them from eating so much. You get fuller, better. But then I'm sure they have complications, isn't it? In the short term, long term.
Yeah. So basically, you've got to increase the dose slowly, so you're just the right level. If you go to too high a dose too fast, then you'll get really unpleasant nausea, really, so almost like a seasickness, which will last for a few hours or a day sometimes. Also, if the dose is too high, sometimes you can get acid reflux because it stops the stomach emptying so fast, so you can get acid coming up and causing quite unpleasant heartburn. Some people report just unpleasant side effects such as bowel upset, diarrhea, that sort of thing. It's quite rare, but some people do. They just don't. It doesn't suit them. The manufacturers of these drugs did animal experiments, which showed that there may be a association with thyroid cancer or pancreatitis. That hasn't, translated into human studies, or even like their experience, with it being available to millions of people, particularly in America. So I don't think there is that risk. I don't think people should worry about that risk.
Okay.
Clearly, you can't test these drugs for 20 years. They've only been tested for a couple of years, so we don't really know the long-term consequences of being on these drugs.
Okay. So can they be used like, we talked about the animal studies. I think it was in rats, isn't it, that they noticed that some rats developed like thyroid cancer, but obviously it's like even taking paracetamol has got risk factors, right? But are there anybody that the Ozempic wouldn't work for, wouldn't lose the 15%, even if they were eating right, doing everything, and Ozempic just doesn't work for them? Or they shouldn't really?
I mean, some people won't get that 15%, and maybe they're a slightly poorer responder. Most people, if they're on the right dose, will lose some weight. They basically go to a level where you're just eating 1 meal a day. But the main people who fail it just don't like the unpleasant side effects of it. They just get, worse side effects than normal. So yeah, but a lot of people most people like it. The downside is when you come off the drug, you
Mm.
tend to put the weight back on.
All the weights, all the 15% back on. Or
Yeah,
some-
in time, unless you've used the drug to change bad habits into good
Okay.
ones.
Okay.
And then if you stop the drug and you don't resume those bad habits, then maybe you will keep some weight off.
Okay. Okay. So I think that, like, from what you're saying, right? Obviously, we talked about the second tier, which is using like the medications that suppresses your appetite and helps you feel full on time. But then it takes us back to the fact that your lifestyle has to really change, isn't it? For you to sustain weight loss, either ways. Because if you took the Ozempic and you lost 15% and you went back and you started eating wrong again, processed food, not
Isn't it back on?
exercising, you're back to normal. You're back to square one again.
I mean, it's the same with the weight loss surgery as well. But it needs to be combined with sensible eating patterns. So, for instance, if you have the sleeve hysterectomy where we remove most of the stomach, you're going to lose some weight. But then, if the surgeon or the medical team don't tell you, actually, you've got to eat pretty sensibly as well, mainly home-prepared foods, trying to avoid all the sugary rubbish. Like, if you ignore that, or you're not told that in the first place, and you're eating a load of ice cream and sweet drinks every day, then you're going to put the weight back on slowly.
Mm.
And then you're in a position where you've had the surgery, your stomach's small, but you're back to square one. So
It's crazy, isn't it? So I was going to talk a bit about weight loss surgery because that's your forte, what you do really well, and you've helped so many people every year. You do hundreds, if not more, every year, I assume, right? Which I think you've done that for a long time. So a lot of people have really benefited. So how do you decide, like, at what point can you offer someone weight loss surgery? Like, is there like a cutoff BMI? BMI meaning body mass index?
BMI is around 35. I mean, it's dependent on your recent highest weight. It depends on whether you're suffering with diabetes or other, obesity related conditions. So around about 35 BMI, but you can consider less if there are other circumstances. But that would be someone of average height, maybe they're 100 kilograms. So that's sort of ballpark figure you would consider. Maybe if they're less than that, you consider the injection treatment.
Okay. And then I was going to ask something else, right? Because so we talked about BMI 35, which is when you do like you average their weight with their height, body mass index. And how do you decide? Because what we have is a lot of people contact us through the concierge and say, I want to have gastric band surgery, I want to have sleeve gastrectomy, right? They come to us with like, I want to have this. But we keep saying to them that it's not just what you want to have, it's what is right for you that will help you get to the weight that you want to get to. And I think one thing that would be nice for us to talk about today is how do we decide what surgery someone has? I know it's quite individualized and bespoke, but how do we put them into different categories and maybe cast a little bit of eye of what the bypass means, what the sleeve gastrectomy means, what the balloons like, just so people understand that bariatric surgery is not just one surgery. It's not like going to.
So when you do your research, I mean, the procedures that I work at, I only offer the ones that really work and I really believe in. So I only offer the sleeve gastrectomy, which we'll discuss in detail in a second. So it's basically removing 2/3, 3/4 of the stomach. And the gastric bypass, which is bypassing the stomach, and there's two types of gastric bypass. When you sort of Google obesity treatments, there's a lot of other stuff that comes up, including the intragastric balloon, which you mentioned. People like the idea of that. It's just an endoscopy, no cuts. So you just put a telescope in your mouth, and the endoscopist blows up a balloon like this big in your stomach. The problem with that is 20% of people can't tolerate it because it's like having a brick in your stomach. It just like get terrible nausea. Next thing you know, you've got to have it removed as an emergency, and you've lost several $1,000s. Even if it does work and you lose, 10 kilograms or 20 pounds, you have to have it removed after 6 months, and then you always put the weight back on. I've never seen anyone who's had their life changed around by gastric balloon. So I don't offer those. The gastric band, which is a sort of more old-fashioned bariatric procedure as well, which you'll see when you Google these things, is plastic ring that you put around the top of the stomach, and it can be adjusted and made tighter. And it just makes eating much more difficult. So you can't eat anything fast. So you have to chew it really well and take your time. Now the problem with that is as you lose weight, you gain your intestines and your stomach are sending out hormones to your brain saying, we're not getting enough calories. food-seeking behavior hormones. So then you start to crave chocolate, sweet drinks, ice cream, things that will go through even a tight band. And then obviously you're going to act on that, and then you just don't lose as much weight, and then you sort of go. The patient will sort of slightly blame themselves as well, but it's actually natural that your brain is going to want to take in energy somehow. Okay, so that doesn't work very well either. But the operations, these more modern operations that I offer, so gastric sleeve-out bypass, they change those signals coming from the intestines and the stomach that go to your brain, and they produce an avalanche of satiety hormones, so you don't feel, you don't feel hungry at all. Your hunger hormones are switched off. Your metabolism remains quite strong; it doesn't collapse. And we do these operations pretty fast recovery, and people just feel very different because the operations don't cause much pain. I mean, I've had quite a few patients joke with me, did you operate on my brain? Because I just feel and think so differently about food. Like they just don't crave processed foods. Again, sweet food tastes too sweet, unpleasantly sweet. Processed food tastes too chemically, and they start to really savor the taste of natural
food,
vegetables and things. So yeah, they have a profound effect on the signaling between your stomach and your brain, which causes just your weight to reset. Your brain just suddenly wants to be from, for instance, 120 kilograms to 75 or something. And you'll lose that weight over a year, and then you'll stabilize at that much healthier weight. So yeah, bariatric surgery is really good, really life-changing.
And so for the sleeve, what's the sleeve gastrectomy is like? You take out a bit of...
Yeah, so sleeve gastrectomy is, so it takes 45 minutes only, the operation, or even less.
Wow.
Under anesthetic. Basically 5 small little cuts about 1 centimeter or 2 in the upper abdomen. As I say, it's keyhole surgery. There's no big cuts, which means it's not too painful. People go home the next day. We basically take the stomach, which is the size of a melon beforehand, and we sort of remove 2/3 of it. So it becomes like a tube. A tube which is as wide as a banana and just slightly curved like a banana. So the capacity decreases, but the main effect is that we've taken away that area of the stomach that secretes ghrelin, the hormone that causes appetite. So suddenly your appetite is gone. You can lose weight without getting that rebound, hunger and appetite and food-seeking behavior that we would normally associate with dieting and weight loss. So it's pretty good.
Okay, thanks. I think the other thing people worry about, because 45 minutes is like nothing. It's like almost like you're walking somewhere and then you're out again, but it has to be done in the safe hands, obviously, and someone that has the experience, because I think a lot of people worry about complications of the surgeries. And I think because a lot of people that are not really qualified and don't have the experience are doing these operations, the data sometimes scares people with, oh, this person had this and it didn't work out well. And that's why I think it's really important talking about it today, because you've got over 23 years experience doing this. So you've seen all the different, almost to say the different things that need to be seen, and you know how to deal with each situation. And I think what we're coming out from this conversation we're having is that to actually sustain lasting weight loss, you've got to get your brain to think differently about food. You've got to get your brain to think differently about your lifestyle. Is that right? Am I saying the right?
Yeah, which is what the operation
does to you.
It's a side effect of the operation, but also if you want to do it, individually without the operation, it's much more difficult. But it's almost like you have to really almost change your identity and really not want to eat bad food. So it shouldn't be that you're giving it up. It's actually that you don't want it anymore. It's a different mindset, and you sort of enjoy that process of having a much healthier life, cooking your own foods, savoring the taste of fresh foods over terrible chemical like sugary foods. So yeah, it's like a process of almost changing identity. It's quite difficult though. That's what my second book's based on, explaining how that might be done.
Okay, thanks. So for people, like, just to recap again, we're talking about lasting weight loss. We've talked about eating right and actually eating non-processed food. We've also talked about medications that can help you, like the famous Ozempic. And we've just talked about bariatric surgery and how it helps you achieve weight loss, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, if you have questions, please put it on the chat. So Dr. Jenkinson, as you know, it's like a world-renowned bariatric and laparoscopic surgeon who's written the book, the best-selling book called Why We Eat So Much. And I think it's a book everyone needs to read. Like, I completely love the book. So when Dr. Jenkinson said he was going to speak, I was really excited because for me, I've struggled with losing weight, putting weight, losing it multiple times. And for the first time, I'm actually doing it right now. That's what I think I'm doing right. I'm doing it right, reading the right books, eating the right food, staying away from processed food, and actually changing my lifestyle completely. Because with that, I feel a lot better. I feel more rejuvenated and I'm winning. So I think that's something we all need to experience. So if you have questions, please just put it in the chat and we can ask him before he leaves us because he's really busy actually. So the other thing I'm going to go to is that we've talked about how to lose weight. So we've achieved weight loss. We've tried to eat non-processed food. We've had Ozempic and then needed to do bariatric surgery. And we've gotten, and I think what is important is how do we maintain that weight after we've lost it? Because people go on and have bariatric surgery, they've lost all this weight, they come back and they put it back on again, right? And I guess we're going back to like the basic again. And I think it's good to hear from you because you've seen that so many times. When people that you've done great work on and you've been happy they've achieved stuff come back to you with the weight back on, what could they have done to stop this?
Yeah, so but the first thing is an understanding that the surgery is only half of the solution. The other half is changing your eating habits to healthier eating habits. You know, once you've had the surgery, certainly for the first year or two, that becomes very easy because you do have a natural sort of aversion to foods that are too sweet and things. But yeah, you're right that some people will revert back to sweet foods and refined carbohydrates because they do make us feel good. They're almost like a type of drug, basically. And there's a number of things you can do. You can sort of say, okay, I know that I'm going to, if I pass a sweet shop or if someone's eating sweets in front of me or there are sweets just there that I could just literally just pick up, to, really focus on that crave, that wanting for, that reward of the sweets. And you'll notice that it sort of goes, the feeling becomes more and more intense, but then you'll notice it receding. Then it will come again, and then it will recede again. It's almost like a wave coming and then just slowly going away. And then as things go, if you can resist something for 10, 15 minutes, you'll find that, the waves, become a lot shallower. It's a lot calmer, and eventually you'll sort of congratulate yourself because you've withstood those cravings. You crave surfs. It's called crave surfing. So understanding and having a mindfulness about how you really want to do this thing. You really want to act on this craving, but actually that feeling just will slowly recede. A better way to avoid even having to go through that is to avoid having food that's going to trigger you and give you that feeling of really wanting to eat it, those bad foods that we love. And the best way of doing that is to try and change your environment. So if what you see around you in your house, so you should try and make any type of bad food like that much more difficult to obtain. Some people have got kids and they've got to have some sweets in the house, otherwise with tantrums, it's difficult to change it. But you need to make the act of getting that reward more difficult. So like put the sweets away in a box locked up somewhere. You've actually got to go through several things, don't get a key or whatever. If you don't have kids, then actually just don't have it in the house. So I think that's really important. And as a first step, try and change your environment to have not have those triggers. You still, even without the trigger, just your brain may think, oh God, I used to do something. I can't remember what it is. Oh yeah, I used to eat things like rubbish. So you can then have healthy alternatives. You can have a whole load of really healthy raw vegetables. Carrots, cucumbers, carrots chopped up, cabbage chopped up, to just have there to snack on. And then you can taste that good food. You can taste the phytochemicals, the anti-inflammatory stuff going into your body and really, really helping you. at the same time, you're sort of fighting that little bit of a crave you've got for bad foods. So yeah, that's what I would advise. You know, if you do get a crave, then you're trying to ride it or surf it, and then but try and avoid, you know, even having those triggers in the house and the environment.
So it's all about mindfulness, isn't it? Like almost like mind over body, right? Saying, one, we're saying that once you've lost the weight, you need to like change the way you see, like almost like change the way your relationship with food. I think that's the word. And you're saying to us, like, we have to like give it some time and say, listen, I'm not going to have this food. I'm not going to have this food till it becomes your reality, almost like you're practicing, meditating and avoided it, because that's your enemy, isn't it? Because you've worked so hard and you've gotten to where you are, and then all of a sudden you're back to square one, eating the same thing. It's not going to change. It's just going to put back all the way back on again.
Yeah, and by changing your behavior, you see, so there's such a lot of new research into habits and habit formation. The fact that actually we act quite often subconsciously. We don't really make decisions. We just see something, we just act on it because it's become a learned behavior, a habit. It's just a thing we do. Like in the evening, you know, maybe we're in a bad habit, we just, you know, get home from work tired, put on Netflix, get out the popcorn or the crisps or whatever, the sweet drinks, you know, and eat
Always nice.
makes you feel great and numbs you. And it just becomes a habit. It's just what, and then it becomes you. Whereas if you change your environment to make that more difficult, and actually something else, which is much more healthy to you, much easier. So have healthy foods, don't have, you know, unhealthy foods, limit the amount of Netflix you can watch, maybe have a load of books around you can read, other things to do, you know. By changing your home environment, you're going to change who you are eventually.
Makes sense, yeah. So I have a question here,
Yeah.
which is, people are bringing out questions. So the person says, what are the life expectancy for the people that did bariatric surgery compared to people that do not have bariatric surgery and continue with obesity?
So I think if you look at some studies, looked at people with a body mass index of 35, so like moderate obesity, not serious obesity, but like a lot of people who are walking around now. So for instance, you know, 120 kilograms or 240 pounds-ish, 250 pounds. If they don't have an intervention like bariatric surgery or success with dieting and lifestyle change, they're going to die 7 years earlier than someone who's normal weight. If you do bariatric surgery on these people, that they will then, you know, get an extension to their life of those 7 years because their weight will go down towards normal. So yeah, obesity itself causes, you know, so many illnesses, cardiac illnesses, you know, blood pressure, cancers, that it does shorten your life. But not only that, you know, it's the quality of your life. So if you're walking around with 120 kilograms or more, you know, every single day, you get used to it. But it's like half my patients are on antidepressants, you know, because it is just depressing. And because people and society don't understand obesity, they blame you, even doctors blame you, and then you start blaming yourself. So it's quite a depressing condition to have, as it's so misunderstood.
So 7 years, that's like a huge time, like your life expectancy reduces by 7 years.
Yeah, even for someone with moderate obesity. So if you're more obese, then it's going to be even shorter.
Shorter. Okay. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So the next question says, my challenge is that suggested food for weight loss are either not readily available for us in Africa or way too expensive. It'll be nice to have a bespoke weight loss menu using our own readily accessible food. I guess that's the comment. Yeah.
So I would suggest that, you know, processed foods, yeah, they are quite cheap. A packet of biscuits, you know, whatever, you know, chips, crackers, whatever, they are pretty cheap. And you can just open them and eat them. They make you feel good. And they have the same argument in England that, you know, healthy food is, you know, far too expensive. And you're right, I mean, we've got food inflation. The price of fish and meat these days is quite high. But you can source it, you know, you can have like cheaper cuts of meat, you can have like mincemeat, all this stuff. I don't think vegetables are expensive. I think you can source cheap vegetables, and you can be, experimental. You can cook them in different ways, bake them, boil them, fry them in something. So I don't agree that, it's too expensive to eat healthily. My next book, How to Eat and Still Lose Weight, is going to have some menu ideas from all around the world, hopefully a few from Africa, using sort of basic ingredients that you can chop and change depending on what your market is selling at the time. But it's good to have local ingredients. Basically, it's really good to have local ingredients, vegetables, meat, fish, and dairy products. Try and avoid sugar, only for a treat. Try and avoid refined carbohydrates. I think in Africa, there is a real problem of having too much oil. So palm oil is like almost like poison. You need to try and really, really cut down that in the cooking.
Palm oil, yeah.
Palm oil. You got to try and cut that down, and just like the carbohydrates. If you get mostly carbohydrates from proper vegetables, and not from bread, not from pasta, not from Gary.
Not from Gary. Yes, I remember Dr. Jenkinson. You've been to Nigeria, so you know Gary well. Did you enjoy?
Well, I did operate on a famous, son of a politician who was. His main concern was after the sleeve operation, when obviously his stomach becomes, like very slim. Can I still eat Gary? But he was okay. He lost a lot of weight actually. So.
Have you tasted it before?
I have, yeah. I like Gary. Yeah. It makes you full. So yeah.
So that's good. So you're talking about like eating vegetables. Saying that, I was going to ask the question. My question is, what do you think about the concept of a raw diet in terms of eating organic and natural food? So like a lot of people say, the advocates of like eating every food uncooked. Do you think that makes any difference? Does that give you more nutrients, or?
You're going to lose a lot of weight, but it's not that nice. I mean, we developed as humans because we started cooking, we started using fire to break down complex carbohydrates like potatoes, yams, cassava, and be able to boil them and consume them. If you then switch back to just eating raw foods, one, it's not that tasty. You're going to lose a lot of weight. I would suggest, as I said before, some of those raw foods, like almost like the salad stuff, but also carrots, cabbage as well, have it as a little food in the evening to exchange for your crisps and popcorn and things like that. Have chop up the charcuterie board of various different raw vegetables. There's nothing wrong with salt and pepper. Salt doesn't cause high blood pressure in most people. You can put some a little bit of vegetable oil, a little bit of lemon on it, and make it taste nice. And you can snack on that. That's where I think raw vegetables come in, but not going totally raw. You're going to lose a lot of weight, but it's not going to be. It won't be sustainable.
Yeah, because I think when you're eating food that is horrible, then one day you're going to eat something nice, and you're like, God, I'm back to normal again. And you start eating all of it again, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's what the problem is, yeah. And sometimes for your tummy, it's not the best thing. We've got a lot of questions because this has been really interesting. Thank you so much.
Can I say a little bit? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem.
On food, because like the food companies are very clever. So the recent thing in America and Europe is plant-based meat.
Plant-based, exactly. Yes, yeah.
And I'm sure that will eventually, because they always want to make money, these food companies come into Africa as well. And they're pushing it because it's like good for animal welfare, because you don't have to kill cows, and it's good for the environment. But these arguments are secondary. The plant-based meat is, totally artificial. It's highly processed. It's full of rubbish, colorings, flavorings, oils, cellulose, which is, basically wood pulp from tree trunks. It's terrible, terrible, terrible food. So don't let anyone trick you into eating plant-based burgers. May as well just open a packet of biscuits. I'm very anti it. I just thought I'd get that in for the audience.
Thank you so much. So we're talking that plant-based food is a no-no. It's just all processed stuff.
It's all like advertising man's way of making you even sicker and getting a lot of money from you.
Yeah. So that's a good one, because a lot of people go like, oh, I've gone vegan now and I've gone
Vegan's
vegetarian.
okay if you're not, if you're not influenced by all of that, that is, you feel good when you're eating it because it does taste like meat. I had one actually just just to see what all this fuss was about. It tastes great, but then when it's inside you, it's like, oh God, this is like causing metabolic havoc. So, but being vegan there's no problem being vegan. Obviously, you've got to like be quite careful about trying to take in enough protein, but yeah, there's no problem being vegan.
But you just have to be naturally vegan, I think,
Yeah,
isn't it?
natural foods.
Naturally vegan, yeah. So, the next question, thanks for that. The next question is, are there natural foods that can suppress appetite instead of Ozempic? Question.
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, protein has been the one that most people say, if you have a breakfast with 2-3 scrambled eggs and some meat or some chicken or some avocado, protein and fat do cause an increase in these hormones, the GLP-1 hormone that isn't, and like the injection, which will, keep you going for much longer. Whereas if you have a breakfast of, carbohydrates, like we're sort of told, toast or cereal or a fruit juice, all of these things are like sugars. That's going to like make you crave an hour later more carbohydrates. So yeah, I would say, yeah, there's no other real drugs that causes, negation of a decrease in appetite, but actually good foods. So high protein, high fat foods.
Yeah. And you talked about having like fish meat. A lot of people also talk about the fact that red meat is bad for you and maybe people shouldn't be eating red meat. What do you think about?
When you started. So the book has got like a whole unpicking of the cholesterol debate.
Exactly, yes.
So the diet heart hypothesis, which is a hypothesis from the 1960s and 70s, pushed by the sugar companies to try and blame the rise in heart disease on cholesterol
On cholesterol,
saturated fat, and they won the argument. But it transpires that all their studies were flawed and sort of manipulated, and it's now really understood by most scientists that saturated fat, so natural saturated fat like red meat, as long as you don't have a family history of high cholesterol, which only 1 in 500 people do, natural saturated fat in red meat and dairy products does not relate to any cardiac risk. Now, the problem is that, even though most scientists sort of know that in the area know this, once an idea is so, ingrained in the population, everyone just thinks it. Everyone thinks that if you have a fatty steak, it's going to further up your arteries and cause you to have a heart attack. And it is so difficult to get out of that, flawed way of thinking. And it is a real problem in that people, when they want to reduce their carbohydrates, they're scared to introduce natural fats, because they think it's going to cause cardiac disease and be unhealthy for you. But yeah, so in my first book, that really is explained in some detail. The fact that we really got ourselves into it really chose the wrong research route and at the detriment of the health of the population.
I think your book is something everyone should read. It's called Why We Eat So Much. And then you're doing a second book at the moment, which I am looking forward to. Like, Why You Eat So Much is so nice. And I'm going to say something about the book before we end, but I'll keep that to the end. So I'm going to go to questions because we have so many questions and we're running out of time. So somebody else says, how many times can one have bariatric surgery if there is a relapse?
So basically, the first operation is the most powerful, unless you've had something that doesn't really work, like a gastric band. So if you had a gastric band before, it's likely it's not going to work very well. You can take a gastric band out and then do an operation that's going to work, like a sleeve hysterectomy or gastric bypass. You will have quite a powerful effect. But if you've had a sleeve operation, for instance, and lost a bit of weight and then put it back on, if you then convert that to a mini gastric bypass, which is the most powerful type of operation, you might get a bit of weight loss, but not massive. It's not going to be as good as would be expected usually. In fact, people who regain weight after bariatric surgery, it's probably quite best to put them on Ozempic and or semaglutide injection therapy rather than further operations.
Thanks, about that. I hope that answers that question. Another person's question says, are there any healthy benefits of brown rice over white rice?
Yeah, so white rice is much more refined. The husk is taken off, whereas brown rice has got a lot more, protein. The GI index is lower. So yeah, wild rice, brown rice is much better for you than white rice.
Okay, thanks. And
Less
then,
tasty though.
sorry,
Less tasty.
let's taste exactly what is so like now I understand why all this like healthy foods taste not so great. But then
I have a friend who really reset his weight just by dietary measures, and he said to me, like, if something tastes too good, it's probably not very good for you. Probably a good rule of thumb.
not fair, is it?
Yeah,
But then we have to get healthy. That's the truth.
yeah,
And we have to keep the weight off also.
yeah.
Thanks. So there's a question saying, is there truth to be to the saying that bad timing of our diets can contribute to weight gain? That is late night snacking, causing easy weight gain.
I'm not sure about the evidence, the time of night, but if you snack throughout the day, it's going to cause weight gain compared to if you just eat in like a particular window. So like this time restricted eating where you're just eating 8 hours a day and then the rest of the time you're either sleeping or fasting. So you start eating late or you finish eating early. Time restricted eating is pretty good for your insulin profile. It does cause some weight loss. So in that respect, late night snacking is not great, but I think there's no evidence that, particularly late night snacking is
A problem.
going to increase your weight just because you're going to bed.
So when you mentioned about the timing of eating, that means intermittent fasting is a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I
Properly.
think time restricted eating is much better. So intermittent fasting is when you like fast for 2 or 3 days a week, quite a extremely fast. Maybe unpleasant a little bit. You don't look forward to those days. Whereas you can get into the habit of, having a later breakfast or an earlier evening meal and not eating mindlessly snacking in the evening or whatever, or eating too much in the morning. So that's time restricted eating at 16:8 or 18:6 is a good thing to slowly get into.
And then that helps you control your insulin, and then that way your weight is better controlled. That's good.
Yeah.
And there's another question says, I know that it's not possible to spot I know that it is not possible to spot reduced tummy fat in the gym, but aside from regular junk food, what can I do to reduce belly fat from my diet?
So what's the question? What can I do from a dietary point of view to reduce belly
fat? Yes.
Yeah, obviously you got to give up fast food. Go lowish carb. I'd say don't go keto particularly. Don't snack between meals. Go to eat old-fashioned food, vegetables, meat, fish, dairy products. If you have 2 or 3 square meals a day, don't load up too much on carbohydrates. You will lose weight seamlessly, and you may lose that body fat, but the belly fat. But the belly fat is quite difficult, so it might be that you've got to really go for it in the gym for that.
Thanks. There's another question that says, is there a role of genetics? Is there a role genetics plays in weight gain? There seem to be some individuals who eat so much here, they don't seem to put on weight. How does science explain this?
Yeah, there's massive correlation between genetics and whether you're at risk or protected from weight gain when exposed to a Western diet. There's about a 70% concordance with your genetics about where your weight's going to be. So we all know there's people who just can't put weight on no matter how much they eat, and they can eat rubbish as well. And we know these people who can't lose weight despite actually eating relatively healthily, and that's all mainly run by genetics. So, but if you've got unlucky genes and you are really struggling with your weight, you really got to try and avoid those processed foods, because they're the crux of the problem.
Okay, thanks. And then there's another question that says, what is the role of exercise in lasting weight loss? Is there any role for it? How much should we be exercising?
I think like moderate exercise, you don't want to unless you really are interested and you've got time in your schedule to become ultra fit, then I think a moderate bit of exercise 2, 3, 4 times a day for half an hour enough vigorous activity to make you sweat, that's good for you. But it's not the fact that you're burning off calories by doing that exercise. That's not how you lose weight. It actually improves your insulin function and also decreases your cortisol, which we haven't really talked about too much, which is another factor that can cause people to want to keep their weight. So by exercising, you're decreasing your cortisol levels, making your insulin much more efficient, and your body just sheds a little bit of weight that way. We know that exercise works, otherwise there wouldn't be gyms all over the place. And the other thing about exercise, it means you can eat more without putting weight on. So if you do exercise for an hour, you can actually, even if you're prone to putting weight on, it doesn't mean you can eat okay.
And sorry, there's another question. Someone says, I know being teetotal is probably the best, but if one does drink, what's the healthiest alcohol? That's a nice one.
I know a lot. As you know, I've got like a big a section in the book on alcohol. So there used to be a diet called the drinking man's diet.
Oh, yes, I read that.
In the 1960s. It's a transient sort of craze where people would give up carbohydrates and exchange it for alcohol. And they all lost a lot of weight because alcohol doesn't cause spikes in insulin. It is a poison, so it's not great for you at all. But it's not one of these things when you read in the newspaper or the magazines that each glass of wine is 300 kilocalories. That doesn't really go into you. It's metabolized out of you. The problem with alcohol is it increases cortisol, so it can make you have a beer belly. And actually, when you eat it, it actually causes a decrease in your blood sugar. So you then go out and want to eat bad foods. And if bad food's available, like in the UK, it's like burgers or a kebab or whatever, or a full English the next morning, then you'll put weight on from those bad food choices. But when you look at the league table of obesity, the people who suffer the most, the Middle Easterners, don't drink. The heaviest drinkers in the world are Eastern Europeans, and they don't have a problem with alcohol. So you look at the epidemiology of it, there's not a direct correlation. Best drink is red wine. It's got loads of antioxidants in, but try and limit to a moderate amount. But yeah, you can definitely have a glass or two of red wine. Is pretty good for you, probably.
Oh, thank you so much. We've actually overrun our time, Dr. Jenkins. It's been like an amazing, amazing evening talking about lasting weight loss, how we can get that weight down. And I was going to recap and say, avoid processed food. That's bad. Eat healthy, loads of vegetables, and meat is not your enemy, as we talked about. Red meat is not your enemy. Just eat nicely. And obviously, we also talked about the fact of eating at certain times. So you're getting your body to get your insulin to act better. And obviously, if you're still struggling, Ozempic is always an option. And bariatric surgery is not your enemy if it's done in the right hands and obviously supervised properly. And I think we're really lucky because we're speaking to someone that's done a lot and has done really successful surgeries, not just for everyday person, but even people that have had really big struggles and they've been able to overcome it. And I said I was going to say something. So because people have come to this talk today, where we decided that we're going to do a lucky dip at the end of their of the talk, and we're going to send Dr. Jenkinson's book to one person who attended today. And I think it's an amazing book to have. So I don't know who it's going to be. We'll do a lucky dip and then we'll email out and then send it to the person, wherever you are. I know people have logged in from the States, from Nigeria, from Cairo, even from Ghana and different places. And we're still going to send you that book to read. And I think for every other person who doesn't get the book, is a book that needs to be read before the second book comes out. And it's called Why We Eat, in brackets, So Much. And I think it's a book that's really changed my life. I must say that. So I'm sending a copy to someone just so that they experience what we've experienced. And we're really lucky because we're going to have another day with Dr. Jenkinson. So you just have to keep tuned on. And we're going to talk about we're going to talk about things that people deal with every day, like reflux, which is also his other specialty, which we all struggle with. Hopefully in 2 weeks, I think we're doing this, or in 3 weeks' time, but we'll reach out to everyone. But I just want to thank you, on behalf of myself, the entire team, and also the London Clinic for lending you to us, because if it wasn't for the London Clinic, you wouldn't be with us today. And for people that don't know, London Clinic is one of the biggest private hospitals in London and is well known for the work that they do. And I think for a lot of people that joined in, a lot of people have what do you call, like, confusion about what they want to do. If you're really struggling with your weight, please email us at info@anormalhealth.com, and we will definitely connect you with Dr. Jenkinson and help you through that pathway. That's why we're here. And that's the whole idea of being in this space, so that you have access to the best person and you know that you're going to have the best care that you will get. I think that's it in a nutshell. I'm going to stop talking now. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Chi.
It's been amazing. Honestly, I cannot thank you. A lot of people have been writing thanks from London, thanks from different places. It's been amazing talking to you. Like, for me, I read your book before I met you, so it's great.
Good.
It's great to hear from an expert talk about something that everyone struggles with every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation again, Doctor.
Thank you. And I'm sorry we've kept you a little bit later than we should. And I know you've had a today.
Yeah.
People are still trying to get in.
Yeah.
And obviously we're going to stop now. For people that missed it or people that couldn't really come, we're going to get the recording out and put it on the YouTube channel so people can follow up. And obviously, if you have questions, please send this to us again. And someone has just says, thanks, very insightful presentation. Thank you. Nice presentation. Thanks from Toronto, Canada. That's good. Thank you. Someone from Canada came in. So that's really good. And thank you so much. So I'm going to say good night from London. It's not really night. It's still bright in London. And I think it's good afternoon from the States. And Canada, I think, is still going to be good afternoon. And someone says, thank you, doctor. The whole team learned a lot from Cairo. Thank you so much, Dr. Jenkinson. And good night from Cairo, I think, also to people in Cairo. And hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks again, if you'll be able to spend some time for us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for coming.